came out and said the risks are shifting and it's opening the way for us to start thinking about changing interest rates. That's what the market really wanted to hear. I think they were surprised to actually hear him say it because he has been so cautious and so careful. And I think what it really means is that he's ready to move on interest rates and lowering them. Now, the way he put it, he could be raising interest rates, but that's very, very unlikely unless the inflation numbers come in with some spectacular spike for some unknown reason that jars inflation expectations. And that was the other key message he had for the markets, which is the way we're going to be operating for the next 5 years at the Fed is that we're going to not average inflation and let inflation go and have this sort of averaging concept that they put in place 5 years ago. But instead, they said we're going to be keeping our eye on inflation expectations. If those things become unanchored, we're going to move, and we're going to move quickly, and we're going to move strongly.
Okay, markets reacted positively, but what about the risk of stagflation ahead and concern that markets are overly optimistic? I go back to that term in the 90s, what was it? Irrational exuberance?
Well, the Fed's job is not to worry about the markets. It's to have full employment and price stability. And the fear, of course, is stagflation. But I think he came very clear and surprisingly so, where he came back to the notion of we think that tariff inflation will be at best transitory, and if it is not transitory, it will not jar inflation expectations. Again, that's the key word. Will it change the way the people think about inflation going forward in the medium term? And if it does, he's going to act and raise interest rates to prevent that. But if inflation expectations remain anchored, even if inflation were to rise, and he expects it to rise from where we are now by a quarter point or so, right, he's going to let it go and worry about the employment numbers.
Okay, let's talk about Donald Trump as well and the growing pressure that Trump has really put on the Fed. He's obviously made a number of personal attacks on Powell, for one, and just last month the Fed governor resigned, and Trump is threatening to fire another governor, and he would have the ability to put two people who would probably support his measures in. Is this at all, do you think, affecting the central bank in the short, and what about long term?
That's one of the things that I thought would keep Chair Powell on the edge and not commit to changing interest rates one way or the other. But the fact that he hinted so strongly he's willing to allow interest rates to go down at the next meeting shows that he's really not worried about Donald Trump so much. It's a shame that President Trump has really made such a big point about firing a governor because of the misstatements she made about mortgage applications. But let's remember, the Fed has always been squeaky clean. Right. Any hint of any kind of impropriety, the governor or Fed president immediately volunteers to retire and leave. We had that with Rich Clarida when he was questioned about his trades. Robert Kaplan, Dallas Fed president, when he was questioned about some trades he made. The Boston Fed president was questioned about some trading improprieties, and they all immediately quit. They said, I'm not going to besmirch the reputation of the Fed with even accusations that are unproven. And then, in fact, these guys did nothing wrong. So the fact that we now have a governor who supposedly actually put misstatements on an application, which technically is a fraud, that goes against the spirit of what every other Fed president and Fed governor has done in the past, which is anytime your reputation is questioned, you just leave.
Yeah, and you talk about the Fed being squeaky clean. Also, a long-time tradition is the chief executive of the United States having a hands-off approach. Now, inflation is inching up. We talked about that. Job growth is slow. Powell talked about that as well. And speaking of the pressure from the White House, Trump also fired the head of the Labor Statistics Board. Are we going to see more of this? And at what point do you think this could adversely affect the economy? Because you really get into an area where people are concerned that could this U.S. government end up cooking vital statistics that could really affect the global economy?
Right now, all of the institutions that develop data are still have a sense of professional integrity to them. No one ever questions the political bias of the numbers that are put out there. The fact that things have sort of been pushing in one direction in a surprising way has got President Trump all worked up. And in this case, we have the case of a new CEO, a president entering on the scene that has a very different style and a brusque and abrupt style that really rankles people the wrong way, and that's very unfortunate because I think the institutions themselves still have a stellar reputation among all the institutions around the world. Our central bank for sure, and our BLS and the BEA who put together GDP and labor market numbers, they still have a premier reputation.
Yeah, and it's absolutely vital if you're going to have something to plan any kind of economic movement forward. Okay, before we go, I want to get your take on the Intel deal with the United States government. This is unprecedented.
It really is very surprising, and again, I think it's a move toward a different kind of capitalism where we have proactive industrial management of the sort that, unlike giving subsidies directly, we want to be able to share in some of the benefits as the government giving these entities or these companies these privileges. So in that sense, it's a step beyond the I'm going to give you money for free, but at a step before I'm going to tell you what to do. We're not nowhere near state capitalism where we direct companies in terms of what they're supposed to research and what's supposed to do the way they did in, say, Singapore. But instead, we're going to say, look, we think you're important, and we're going to put our we're going to put our ownership. We want a part of the ownership of this company. That's so important.
Yeah, before I let you go, I want to pick up on that state capitalism because I can't help thinking if a Democrat would have done this, conservatives would have been up in arms. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think any hint that we are going to interfere with governance of the company, how it's governed, and then also how it's going to conduct its research and expansions in the future, I think Republicans and Democrats will come up in arms. But right now, we're right at the edge of that line, and we haven't crossed it yet.